Welcome back everyone to Formula One Manager 22. And in our first video in the series, we talked about a general overview of the game. We talked about this game's focus is solely on Formula One and solely on the 2022 season. Now, that's a bit unfortunate in my opinion, as I believe there's a whole lot more to uncover, but who knows what the future might bring either this year in terms of DLC or in future iterations as time goes by. However, for now, we are focused solely on the Formula One 2022 season. We also spent some time going through each of the areas you see at the bottom of the screen and talking about how they can be used to improve the overall performance of our team. Now, because our team is Williams, we are at the back of the grid, which means that we are not proficient in really anything. We are not strong. We need to improve everything about our cars, everything about our staff, everything about our facilities. I say that because everybody's going to have their own ideas about what they want to improve first and what they feel gives them the best bang for the buck. I'm not going to claim to be an expert. Instead, what I'm going to do are show you some examples of how the process works so that you can get an idea of if you want to purchase this game on your own, or maybe some ideas on how you want to play the game on your own. So for us today, we're going to dive in. We're going to make some facility upgrades. We're going to develop some new car parts to improve our performance. Now, none of that is going to take effect immediately, which is why it is important for us to begin here at the very beginning of the game. So let's begin by taking a look at some important information. Number one, the Bahrain Grand Prix is our first race, and it's 11 days away. So we don't have a whole lot of time, but we do have not quite 2 weeks to get there. We also know that we're starting with just shy of $20 million, so we do have a little bit of money up front to spend on some upgrades. But to get an even better idea about our finances, we'll come to monthly balance and see that after taking into account all of our incoming money from the various means and all of the money that's leaving each month, we have about 4.8 million in profit. And that's good because that's the money we're going to count on going forward to keep us afloat. Every time we do an upgrade to our facility, staff, or drivers, that's going to increase our outgoing amounts and decrease our actual profit, except that we should, for every bit of money that we spend for upgrades, we should expect to ultimately get more in income through more prize money, board payments, and so forth, although they won't necessarily happen at the same time. So keep those things in mind. Everything we do should lead to a corresponding improvement on the track. That's why we're doing this. So as we come back out, I'm going to start in the facilities area. Improving our facilities is vital to the future of our team, and as we've already talked about, Williams doesn't exactly have great facilities at the very beginning. So we need to do a lot of work here. But for us, we're going to spend our roughly $20 million, or a portion of it at least, on a couple of improvements to our facilities. The first is under car development, because car development is how we go faster. So I'm looking at the wind tunnel or the CFD simulator. Now, all of these are viable options for upgrades and certainly things that we'll want to do long term. Everybody's going to have their ideas on which of these are most important and when to do them. However, I am going to simply show you examples of how the process works, and you can make your own decisions about how you want to spend your money. Now, the reason why I'm looking at the wind tunnel and CFD is because aerodynamics are everything in Formula One, and these have a very direct effect on the development of new products for our car. And let's look at exactly how that will work. So if we click on the wind tunnel, you can see over to the right hand side, we're going to ignore the monthly upkeep right now and focus on the car and how the performance of the car is affected. You can see effects gained per unit of testing, and we'll see what that per unit of testing means here momentarily. But here are our improvements, and then if we come under the upgrade, $10 million over 63 days, and we get essentially a doubling. So per unit of testing, we get double the improvement after this upgrade. That is very important. Now, not because we're simply moving from level 1 to level 2, but because ultimately we need to be all the way to level 5, and there's no better time to start than the present. And I believe this will give us a huge bang for our buck as we move forward. Same thing with the CFD simulator. You can see here on the right, we do an upgrade and the effect doubles. Both of these are $10 million. I'm going to go ahead and do the CFD because its completion time is a little bit quicker. So we're going to spend $10 million here, roughly half of our money. Here you can see the breakdown of the details, and we will take it. So it's not quick. These upgrades to facilities are not done overnight, but this is a long-term project. We're going to be playing multiple seasons in a playthrough, so we need to go ahead and get started in areas that will improve our car long-term. So CFD simulator, done. Now we could look at other car development facilities, but we're down to just under 10 million. And there are a few other things I want to look at and then ultimately get into car part development. All right, staff facilities. There are a couple of things I want to look at here. First is the Team Hub. Why do I want to look there? Well, this weekly experience gain. For an upgrade of 1.5 million, which will take just shy of a month, we get double the experience gain for our staff each race weekend. That's huge. That is a fantastic way to improve our existing staff. Now, we have the ability to sign new staff, but we have some long-term contracts on this team, so I'm not sure how much staff turnover we're going to have in the near future. So right now, we really need to focus on improving the staff that we have. And the good news is, whenever it's time and we decide we want to bring in better staff, then the facilities will already be in place to improve them as well. So I believe this 1.5 million is money well spent for the future of our team. So we'll do that. The scouting department. Not a lot of money at 1.3 million. It increases our scout capacity from 2 to 3, but right now I don't feel like that is at all valid because we do have some longer term contracts and I am not focused on swapping out the staff just yet. So instead we'll come down to the race simulator. 1.9 million, only 15 days time. Certainly the quickest we've seen, but this time we get the experience gain for the drivers per race. So there we go. That is what we're looking for. So I'm going to do this upgrade as well. So now we're upgrading that building as well. That's a total of 3 of our facilities. We're down to about 6.5 million as we move our way into operations. Now here we already have a level 2 boardroom. Certainly no reason we couldn't upgrade to 3, but instead I'm going to focus down here to a couple of other things. Number 1 is the helipad. It doesn't cost a whole lot and it's a one-time improvement, so I'm going to go ahead and build that. This will give us access to slightly higher payouts. Again, not a huge thing, but we're going to go ahead and get that built. The tour center, we're already at a level 3, but for $475,000, we can improve our weekly income for a modest improvement in monthly upkeep. So let's go ahead and do that upgrade as well. We want all of the income that we can get. Even though it's not a lot, we will take it and run with it. So now we're down to about 5.7 million. All right, those are all of the changes that I really want to do in here, and we've done several. And I feel like that is a very good start for our team. Now let's come over to the cars. All right, and we want to go to car part development. So we just decided over here in facilities to upgrade the CFD simulator, and we talked about that per unit of testing and how much gain we get from that. Now it's time to see how that all comes into play. Under car parts development, we're going to do a new project, and we're going to do a design project. Remember, first you need to design the new part, hopefully improved over your existing parts. Then you need to manufacture that new part once it is designed, and then research is for the next year's regulations, and we're certainly not there quite yet. So here we go. We have our options, keeping in mind that unless there is some sort of randomness to this, we'll be getting a new suspension very soon that they haven't really told us about to this point in the game. But as soon as race number 1 is over, we should be getting a new suspension. So we're going to focus on the underfloor. All of these are valid options, but the underfloor, the reason I'm going to choose it is because it focuses a lot on cornering, both clean air and dirty air, and then some improvement to acceleration as well. But again, there are really no wrong answers here. We need to improve everything on our car, and we have plenty of time to specialize later on. Right now, it's just about overall improvements. And at the top of the screen, you see two options, the CFD and the wind tunnel. Well, we're improving the CFD. We're already doing an upgrade. Here is the per unit. We have 6.3, we'll just go ahead and call them hours right now, even though that's not exactly how it breaks down, but we'll call it 6.3 hours. And then for the wind tunnel, we have 84 hours remaining in this ATR period of 56 days. So we need to figure out how many parts can we design within this 56-day period, because that will give us an idea of how we need to break down these hours. Can we use all of them now? Maybe a third of them now, half of them now? How do we need to break it down? Well, for that, for the underfloor, we need to see the summary screen, which is going to tell us how long it's going to take to develop this part. Now, this will be adjusted on subsequent screens, but for right now, it gives us an idea. 75 days, so a long time, much longer than the ATR period. So if we're looking at that, then, well, we could simply use all of it now. But other parts aren't going to quite take as long. If we look at, for example, the wing, 50 days, so very close to our AR period. 50 days for the rear wing as well. And then we get something like the chassis, for example, only 30 days. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and focus on the wind tunnel hours, because we know we're going to have an improvement to our CFD per unit. So every click you can see is giving us improvement here, focused on the drag reduction and the airflow sensitivity, but you can see how those are improving for each click. And remember, that's going to be doubled once we have our upgrade finished to our CFD facilities. So for right now, I'm going to leave that alone. For the wind tunnel, this is where we're going to focus our attention. I'm going to use half of the wind tunnel time right here. I'm not saying that's the best idea, but I'm saying that we want to get some benefit from this, and I'm not exactly sure how many of these new parts and pieces we're going to be able to develop during this 56-day period. So I don't want to leave any on the table. So we're going to go ahead and use half of our wind tunnel hours right now, and we'll save the CFD until after the upgrade is finished. So now you see the improvements we have here. It's time to move on to the design focus. We have some presets that we can use. Balance, optimize for aerodynamics, low speed, high speed. We can go any of those directions you want to. I'm going to leave it at balance because I want to do a manual adjustment to the focus. And there are two ways you can do this. You can, remember, I'm on the PC version, so you can use mouse and keyboard for this. You could simply click and drag with the mouse and move it back and forth, or you can simply use the mouse to highlight the area you want and then use the arrow keys on the keyboard, and that's what I'm going to do. A little bit easier to make your adjustments that way. So what do we want to focus on? For me, I want to focus on downforce. Low speed, medium, and high speed. All right, so you see the numbers as they are right now. I'm going to use the arrow keys, and I'm going to go over 2 clicks on each one. Now, as I improve each of these areas, I'm taking away some of the improvements here in other areas. So what I'm actually going to do here is I'm not going to worry about drag reduction. It's important for sure, but I'm not going to worry about that. I want all of the focus right now on drag reduction. And you might be thinking we could have used a focus preset for this, and you could, but I wanted to show you guys that there are other options that you can do this manually. So I'm going to go ahead and move this over, and I'm going to keep doing this until we don't have very much change in the drag reduction, but we are getting some nice improvements both on downforce as well as the sensitivity, which is going to help us in dirty air. So about 5% or so improvement here, as well as our improvements to the various levels of downforce. Now, if we change this from the raw numbers, which frankly don't mean a whole lot in and of themselves, we need to see how that's going to change our rank on the grid. And here you get a great idea of exactly that. Medium and high speed are going to improve greatly because of this. And we get some improvement in dirty air as well. So everybody's going to, once again, have their own idea as to what you need to focus on. I just wanted to show you this as an example. So there you have it. Now we'll click continue. And you can see right now it's going to take $1.1 million. A lot of money for sure, but certainly not going to break the bank for us. Now we need to choose the number of engineers. All right, so the more engineers, the shorter the time frame. So if we start out with just one, it's going to take 93 days. That's a long time. We certainly want to get quicker than that. So if I go to 2, we're down to 84. 3 is at 77. Now I'm going to stop at 3 because that's half of the available engineers, and we're going to be ready here in just a moment to do a second project for development. So I want to save some engineers for that, and we're simply going to split it down the middle. Now we come to the approach. And I'll let you guys sort of read through this middle area here to see the differences, but just keep in mind it's going to affect both the cost, the time, and the expertise. I'm going to go with, instead of normal, I'm going to go with rushed, because you can see that's going to pretty greatly increase our the speed with which we are developing this part. It's going to cost us some money, but not as much as if we go to intense. Intense would be nice because it really helps to improve the future development, but it's also a huge chunk of money, which I'm not quite ready to spend just yet. So we go rushed. I'll spend the extra $550,000 to get it about 20 days, 25 days sooner. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. It's going to cost us $1.6 million. We'll confirm that. And now you can probably get an idea as to why I wanted to save a little bit of money for our design. So underfloor, underway. Let's go with chassis. Now again, we could use any of these. Let's go chassis. So for the chassis, we take a look at where we are without making any adjustments. We could move up a couple of spots in both engine cooling and our airflow. Drag reduction really doesn't get us anywhere. So do we want to use anything? We're not going to use the CFD. Do we want to use our remaining hours right here? Let's see. If we use the remaining hours, what does that actually get us? Well, not really much of anything. Now, surely it is improving things, but as far as our status on the grid, it's not really helping anything. So what I'm going to do right here, because there's not enough of a difference, I'm going to back out. And we're not going to do the chassis right now. Instead, let's go to the front wing and let's see what this gets us. So once again, I'm going to max out our wind tunnel hours. And let's see what we get. So high speed, very beneficial there. A little bit of brake cooling and a little bit of the airflow. So not too bad. And I know we're going to need better front and rear wings. So let's take a look here. What can we do to improve things? So we're going to continue with our balance, but I do want to show you guys, what if we just optimize aerodynamics? We get rid of the brake cooling. Okay, you can see we're actually going to get worse there, but we get a lot better at high speed. We get a lot better airflow, particularly in the front, a little bit better sensitivity, and so forth. But let's go back to the balance, because I kind of like doing these manually. So if we come back and I'm going to leave this at 19th for now, and we may need to further adjust that. And let's go back to show the values, because I want to keep this, the brake cooling is what I meant to change. Change the wrong one. I want to keep this about the same right now. Okay, that's where I want to improve is on the airflow on the front. So you can see that's now about the same. Let's see what that gets us on the grid. So our airflow sensitivity, we move up a little bit, not a lot. Brake cooling, we stay exactly the same, but high-speed cornering, much better. And a decent increase in the medium speed as well. Low speed, not a lot there. But I feel like this is very good for our very first part improvement. So that's nice. Doesn't look like we're going to get a whole lot of low speed improvement unless we just literally focus on that. And I'm not ready to do that. So let's go ahead and lock that in. Then our engineers, we've already talked about, we're going to use the remaining 3. That takes us down to 49 days. And the approach, I want to do rushed and get it in 33. Because I'm trading time for money right now. Long term, I wouldn't mind doing intense development. But we're not quite there with our cash flow just yet, to my liking anyway. So 33 days, we're going to get that, 1.28. Let's make it happen. All right, excellent. So as soon as these designs are done, we'll move them over to manufacturing and get those parts up and running and on the cars. But that's going to mean it's going to be a few races before we're going to have those new parts. Okay, and at any time we need to check in on the current status, we can see exactly where we are on this. All right, so let's come back out to the menu. So here we are, still on the home screen. We have about 2.8 million, and I'm going to leave it right there because I'm not sure exactly what our first race is going to bring as far as cost versus our revenue. So we're just going to hold off and save a little bit of money in the bank because there's certainly some more upgrades that we could do, particularly in the facilities area, but we're going to hold off on that. So now at this point, I'm going to move us toward our first race. We're going to hit continue. Oh, and we've got an email we need to address. A kickoff party, of course. We've had an idea for a season kickoff party to help celebrate, and we need budget approval. So what do you think? Well, I think it's a great idea because anything that improves morale, I think is a good idea, and we should do it if it is reasonable financially. And this 10,000 certainly, I believe, is. Okay, so we've taken care of that. Let's go ahead and click on continue. Helipad is done. Remember, didn't cost a whole lot. Certainly didn't take very long. So it is now done. Okay, and just in case you're ever wondering, okay, what was that upgrade I did and how does it improve things? Well, it's going to give you that information here in the email. You can also visit, hey, let's visit the helipad if you want to. Now we can also improve that, but right now I don't feel like it gets us really anything that we're looking for, but we certainly could. We're going to focus our money abroad. So our sponsor obligations, really nothing for us to do here, which was a little bit disappointing for me. I was hoping that there would be something more to that area, but from what I can see at this point, we just simply get emails about it. It does affect the team in how you accrue improvements and things like that for short periods of time, but overall, just not a huge deal, I don't think anyway. So a bit disappointed in how that was brought about, but we'll take the good with the bad. All right, so now we got one more email to look at, but you can see it's time to race. So let's go ahead and get our race prep. All right, so there's some basic information about the track itself. And of course, we've got some testing results, which are not going to look good for us. We've already done the car parts development, so all of that is taken care of. Now, let's take a look at all the information here. We've seen the circuit information. We know the most important thing for us here would be the number of laps. We've already got tires allocated. We have nothing to do with that. I can't choose that. Our targets, we want to reach Q2. Do we think that's reasonable? Probably not, but we'll see. It's a target, and we get some incentive money, but even if we don't reach this, we don't lose anything. That's the good thing. So qualifying position, now we can start to give some guarantees. Guarantees are not the same as incentives. Guarantees have a potential loss involved. This is essentially us guaranteeing to our sponsor and our board that, hey, we are going to reach this qualifying position, which in this case, we're going to qualify at least one of our drivers in the top 15. Do we think we can do that? We can also say we're going to reach Q3. Now, to me, this seems ludicrous and out of your mind for Williams here in race number 1, unless you got some serious strategy that I don't know about. But can we get somebody in the top 15? We might be able to do that. The question is, are we willing to risk nearly $24,000 to make 95? And the answer for me is yes. There are 20 cars on the grid. Can we get at least one in the top 15 just in qualifying, not the race? I'm hoping that we can. But if we can't, then we'll lose that $23,800. All right, back to the race targets. Again, if we can finish inside the top 15 with both drivers. Now, that is a tall order for Williams right now. But who knows? Maybe with the right strategy that can happen. The fastest lap. Do we want to guarantee that we can hold the fastest lap? And the answer for me is absolutely not. Maybe you can through the perfect strategy and the perfect use of the in-race tools that we'll see momentarily. Maybe you can. But for me, I'm certainly not confident enough in my abilities during the race to make that happen. So here you see the drivers, and we're all good as far as the drivers. That is certainly not a problem. I believe we are ready for the race weekend. For our purposes today, we are not going to manually handle practice or qualifying. The reason is simply time. There is a lot of opportunity for you to manually control a lot of the race weekend directly. The practices, the qualifyings, the race strategies, and even the drivers themselves and how they race and handle the car within these sessions. You can easily spend multiple hours in every race session, or race weekend, I should say. But we obviously don't have that kind of time in today's video, so we're going to leave that up to our team to handle most of that, which is my preference anyway. So let's go ahead and continue. But here you can see our forecast. Looks like it's going to be cloudy, but we don't see any rain forecast, which sort of makes sense given where we are. Here are our two drivers and everything that they are preparing practice 1 for. Now, we could change out drivers. We could, remember, we have a reserve driver, and if we wanted to level them up, get them experience, then we can simply put them in the car in practice 1. But we are not going to be handling the practice because we're going to simulate to qualifying. All right, so let's go ahead and confirm that. So you'll see the computer will go ahead and take care of these sessions, and then as we hit next, we'll get the breakdown for practice number 3. We'll skip through that particular screen. So we see a 1:33.1 is the fastest time in P3, practice number 3, and we're at the bottom. Albon and Latifi, 18th and 20th. So yeah, we're nearly 3 seconds. We're our fastest car off the lead. So that doesn't look good for us. All right, now here are the goals. And what did we achieve? Well, track acclimatization, 100%. That simply means that our driver knows the track well now. Car parts, it's a brand new car to them. Brand new year, first race, brand new car. So this will actually improve and build upon itself from race to race unless we start replacing multiple parts on the car. As we replace parts, obviously that hurts the knowledge. They will need to learn the new parts. So this will be an ongoing battle throughout the season. And then the setup confidence, the closer you get to 100%, the better. And we're sitting here at 69%. So overall, not too bad. We get a performance bonus of 11 out of 15. And you can see for each driver over here on the right-hand side what that means. What does that performance bonus of 11 out of 15 mean? Well, here's your answer over here to the right. So we click on continue. And again, it'll give us some information. We can see results, sponsors, reports, and so forth. But I can tell you that our guarantee of the qualifying position is not looking good for the top 15. We'll just have to wait and see. All right, so let's go ahead and start qualifying. Again, we're not going to be managing this session, although it can be quite a bit of fun to manually handle some of this stuff. I must admit, that is not my style in these types of games. I prefer to be hands-off. I prefer to hire the people to do it, let the race engineers and so forth handle it, but it can be a lot of fun to manage the sessions, such as when your cars go out, what the setup is, the adjustments, the tires, and so forth. It can be quite a bit of fun, particularly if that is going to be your focus. All right, so here in qualifying, yeah, to say we didn't make it to the top 15 is an understatement. So we know we're going to lose a little bit of money there. No harm done. We were well off the pace. So if you had any wonders about just how good or bad our car was, well, this should probably help you out a little bit. So if left to the computer, we certainly are in a lot of trouble. But for me, that actually excites me because it means it's a long-term project. We're finishing in the back now. We're probably going to spend the entire race running around in the back. However, that makes it that much sweeter. Eventually, after multiple seasons, when we're able to work our way up through the grid to ultimately contending for race wins, podiums, and so forth. So now, practice and qualifying are out of the way. Our cars are locked in, but we need to take care of the strategy. You notice car 1, no strategy. Car 2, no strategy. So let's go ahead and set some strategies now. We would like to use strategy A if at all possible. It might not be a bad idea to swap the strategies and not use the same strategy for both, because simply we do not want to stack up our cars on pit stops. But if there's going to be any reasonable distance, such as say 4 to 5 seconds between the two cars, then we can use the same strategy if we would like. I am going to go ahead and do just that. I'm going to hope, because I don't think our two drivers are close enough to each other, that they're going to be running exactly together on track, but I could be wrong and we may stack them up. We'll find out. So strategy A, 2 sets of softs and a medium, and then you can see B and C. Over here to the right, you can see the estimated race time, and A, B, and C overall are not that different. Just the main difference, of course, being the overall sets of tires that you're using. I'm just going to simply go with A, or you can do your own strategy. Choose none, and that will mean that it will simply be up to you to manually call the pit stops at the appropriate time. Using a predefined strategy will send a reminder to you. Essentially, the race engineer will tell you that, hey, our race window or our pit window has opened. So we're going to go ahead and choose that, and we're going to back out here. Same thing for Albon. I'm expecting Albon to be our number 1 driver here. He certainly has the better stats. I'm expecting him to be the number 1 driver and far enough ahead of Latifi to not stack us up on pit road, but we'll see.
Clear skies tonight, with the drivers having now arrived at their grid positions. Here we have Alexander Albon.
All right, so we'll go ahead and
work
our way through the initial screens and get to the start of the race.
And it's lights out.
All right, so one thing you'll immediately notice are the graphics. They do look quite nice. Now, there are some things that look a little off to me about the graphics, but certainly not enough that I am going to complain about them. They look a little hazy to me at points. And you're going to notice some things about the AI and the driving techniques overall. But again, we're here for the management focus. So as we get the race started, obviously we cannot go at a standard timing of 1x for the entire race. 57 laps, it'll take over an hour and a half. Close to 2 hours for all of this. We don't have that kind of time. But while we're getting started, let's take a moment. I'm going to actually swap over to Albon. And let's take a look at exactly what information is given to us. If we start in the top left-hand corner, of course, we have our standard intervals here. We have the leader, the interval to the leader. We have the tire that each person is on, as well as the tire wear. So let's go ahead and pause it for a second. You notice here that we have some differences, and that's because not everybody started on new tires, but it brings me to one very important area. And this is something that I'm struggling with right now in the game, and that is how to manage the tires and the driving style. So if we take a look at the very first area, our pace. Now, normally for Motorsport Manager, you would manage your pace based on the temperature of the tires. In this game, I don't really see that. Now, you might see a message every once in a while that's saying the tires are getting a little bit warm or something, but as best I can tell, it doesn't affect anything, or at least nothing that I can see on the screen. Instead, what you do have are tire wear indicators. That's these slopes here. And so as long as your tire wear is following these slopes, then you're right on schedule. If it starts to dip in to these slopes, then you'll know that you're wearing the tires faster than your race plan is calling for. Or if you see that it floats out into here, then you're not wearing them as much. So you need to be more aggressive. That's the overall idea. But what I have found is that you can attack and be aggressive the entire time, which is very odd to me. So that's what we're going to do right now. And I'll show you guys how this works out. I'm going to leave it at aggressive and not attack, because I have seen it dip down a little bit more aggressive on the tire wear there. But for right now, we'll just stick with aggressive. Okay, so we've got our basics up here, the number of pit stops, sector data, last lap, and so forth. So we got your basic data here in the top left. In the top right, we have a lot of information here. We won't go through all of this for time reasons. Then you come back to your race view, which will give you some basic information about weather, again, to the accuracy of your facilities. Then you've got your strategy view. Once again, we've seen this screen already for each individual driver. So that takes care of our pace. Then we got our fuel. This is kind of a mess, I believe, right now. I'm going to leave it at balanced, but the results seem to be a little bit all over the place. So I'm expecting that there are going to be some improvements and some updates issued to the game to address some of these things. I'm just going to leave this alone at balanced for both drivers. And then comes the ERS. This is one of my least favorite parts of this because, as I mentioned, I do not like to micromanage the races. I would much prefer for the driver and the race engineer to simply do their job and to manage this accordingly, but we'll have to do at least a little bit of that for at least one of our drivers. One of the reasons I don't like doing it is because it takes a few steps and it sort of clutters up the screen. Add that to the fact that I don't really like doing it anyway, and it's not good for me. But as I mentioned before, if you are a very hands-on type of player, if you prefer to be involved in every decision during the race, then you're going to love it because there is a lot going on and a lot for you to get your hands into on this. All right, so for right now, we're sitting here at neutral, which essentially means they're going to try to maintain the battery. We can choose to harvest, which will add back to the battery, getting us closer to 100%. Or we can use deploy, defend, or overtake, which is a bit odd because they all seem to drain the battery at the same rate. A bit odd to me. So we'll work with those a little bit throughout the race. But just remember, I'm not trying to optimize today's race. I'm trying to show you examples of how the gameplay works. So now that we've made that adjustment, okay, we're on aggressive here. I tell you what, let's just go one step further. Let's go aggressive for one, attack for a second driver. And let's just see the differences throughout the first stint. All right, let's look at the different cameras. Of course, right here, we've got one of the, I'll call TV cameras. Here is my favorite. This is the onboard. And I love this camera. Then we've got a rear-facing camera. We've got a slightly offset camera, and then we've got a front wing camera. So I prefer the onboard, which is only slightly offset just above the driver's head. Definitely my favorite camera. Now, we also have some additional information here for each driver. Okay, so we've already looked at pace, fuel, and ERS. Then we have our car condition. And we can take a look there. Now, right now, I haven't seen anything. There's your information that says the tires are getting a little warm. But right now, we're going to go ahead. It says slightly overheating, but again, I don't have any indication, at least not that I'm aware of. I could be missing something, but I don't have any indication of what the actual temperature is or how to regulate that back and forth very easily. So you've got car condition, which right now we haven't had any damage, no contact or anything. So we're perfectly fine here. And then we have our pits. Now we're certainly going to use this in a little while, but it shows you our pit window. And then we have our driver. So if we click on the driver, we have a couple of commands that we can issue. Don't fight against your teammate and hold back the cars. I've had mixed results with these. Again, I'm expecting some more bug fixes and updates over time to address some of this, but I haven't had great results, or at least consistent results, I will say, with these. Then you have your timings, your various deltas, green, purple, and so forth there, and then some basic telemetry as well. I generally will leave it right here because it gives me some information about our fuel delta, which should come out pretty close to exact over the course of the full race, at least if I leave it alone anyway. And then the ERS, we can see that right now he's not using, neither driver are using very much of the ERS. Now we've got DRS enabled here. This is going to mix things up quite a bit and can actually form some trains, unfortunately, during the race I've seen on multiple occasions. So let's see. Nope, could not make up anything there. So now that we've sort of seen, this is how the start of the race goes. We've seen some of the information. Now let's go to the one screen we haven't seen just yet. And that is the overall track map. So here again, we're still at 1x. I'm about to change that, but you can see where everybody is on the grid. And of course, right now we are sitting here in last. So not exactly what we're looking for. Your max time is a 16x. So leave the race on this the entire time, or at least as much as you can, and the race will take 1/16 of the time. My preference is 8x because it's going fast enough to save quite a bit of time for a full race, but at the same time, I can at least make out my cars and have some information. So now that we are moving our way into the race, all right, our pit window is going to be coming up
Aston Martin with a great
very
play
shortly.
there. They've moved
You
up a
see,
place.
we've got an opportunity to watch a replay. Now, I am
that a lock-up on the
not
track?
doing that. In fact, I would actually like the ability to get rid of those because in this case, they were related
Just
to
gained
us
by Williams.
and our team. But a lot of times it will be showing us a lockup or somebody runs wide on another team, and quite frankly, I don't care. For the most part, that's
Looks
not
like
important
Aston Martin
to me.
have just gained a race position.
So you can see here that we have a bit of a fight going on
And
with
there's an
Lance
overtake
Stroll
from Williams.
with Albon. So the DRS is doing its job. They're just passing each other back and forth for now. And we'll see if we're able to pull away. It looks like we might be able to. Pits are coming up in 5 laps. So just for a moment, I'm going to pause. Because remember something we talked about before the race when we were setting strategies. We have both cars on the same strategy, meaning that the pit window for both is opening up at the same time. We're swapping onto the same tires and so forth. I was worried about the possibility of stacking them up. Well, pretty quickly you can see here that we need about 3 to 4 seconds minimum to avoid stacking them in the pits, and it looks like we have more than enough time for that just based on our intervals here. So that's good. As I go ahead and restart the race, the other thing you'll notice is that the tire wear. The difference between aggressive and attack is certainly apparent. A full 7% as it stands. But the question is, how low can we let the tire wear get? And the answer to that is about 30%. You're going to start to get messages from your driver that things are not too good with his tires at about 30%. So right now, we're at 44%, and we need 2 more laps. So as you can see, we're doing just fine with the tires, which is a bit odd to me that you can go full out for an entire stint and not really have any issues. Now, granted, we didn't do this at the very start of the race, so we're missing a lap or so here. But as we get ready to make our pit stop, let's take a look at one more thing. So the pit window is active. Does that mean we need to come in right now? Well, we could. And based on where we are right here, maybe we want to, if we're going to be this aggressive with our driving style. But if you'll take a look right up at the top of this particular window, and again, we have this for both drivers, this green area is when we really want to pit. That's when we would prefer to pit. That's the optimal time. But because we've been pushing so hard with Albon, which I would argue has had great result, then we might need to come in a little bit earlier to make this happen. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to back this down to aggressive. Now, it's not going to help us for this particular stint, but it should help us moving forward. And if you'll notice, our tire wear really isn't that bad. You know, it's a bit below the optimal slope, but not bad. So I'm hoping they will adjust that, because this just doesn't seem quite right. But for now, it's what we have. So I'm going to go ahead and let this run, and you'll see this change. In fact, there it went right there. So I'm going to go ahead and leave him here. Now that we've seen the difference between attack and aggressive, now you can see we're at 30%. Let's go ahead and bring him in. So I'm going to go ahead and do a pause. Pit options. So we know this is our strategy. We're coming on to the medium tire. All right, so right here you can see as I mouse over the medium, it shows up here at the top, will show planned. So there we go. Let's go ahead and check that box. We don't have to worry about fuel. We might wish that we could put a little bit more fuel in, but we cannot. And it tells you our estimated time, and we're good to go. So let's go ahead and pit this lap. And in fact, let's do the same thing for both drivers, since we don't really have to worry about stacking them up. Let's go ahead and pit both drivers. Now you can see Albon is in there. Didn't take very long, and he's back off and running. For this stint, I'm going to leave him at aggressive instead of attack. We needed maybe one more lap there to get into optimal, so I decided to pit both of them at the same time so that we didn't have to really worry about bringing them in separately for the purposes of today's video. But you could certainly have done those separately. Keep in mind, at the top of the screen, anything that happens while we're in this particular screen, it gives us an option to view a replay, overtakes, locked up, when they lock up the tires, or they run wide, an incident, all of those types of things. Now, we're certainly hoping that we're not part of any incident, but we're coming up on halfway through. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to keep our pit window here. I'm actually going to increase this to 16x right now. And keep in mind one very important thing. I am not micromanaging the ERS. There is benefit to doing that. Without question, there is benefit to doing that. But I am not doing it because it drives me nuts to do that. And if I'm going to try to do that with both cars, then it's going to mean that it's going to be hard to do from this screen, and it just really isn't worth it to me. However, I do want to mention, and I feel like I would be remiss if I did not mention, that there is benefit to doing that. But you can see now, Albon is definitely the stronger of the two drivers based on today's performance, and we'll see how that continues forward. But yeah, he's doing quite well. Lance Stroll, he's left him in his wake. In fact, he's trying, it looks like, to run down Vettel in the other Aston Martin, but we'll see. We'll see if he can do that. Right now, he's sort of holding steady, maybe gaining a little bit, losing a little bit here and there, just depending. But we're on 16x, and you can say it's going to take a little bit of time, because remember, you're going to have to pause things from time to time, maybe to make any adjustments, depending on your level of comfort and desire to manually manipulate a lot of the race decisions by your car, your team, and your driver. All right, so you can see the pit window is going to open here shortly. It does not mean that we're coming in during this time. So what I've done is split up
We've just had a spin.
the view here. I'm looking at the pit window here on one driver, but for Albon, I'm looking at the tires. Because I want to see
Sounds like someone's locked up.
if we can make it to our optimal time. In fact, there we go. So optimal pit stop time has arrived. That's the information that's going to pop up. We can see, now granted, we can change this at any time. We do not have to follow along with our designated strategy. We can pit whenever we want, change whatever we want. However, I'm going to go back to the soft tires if we have any. And I say if because if the CPU did not use them all up during practice. Okay, it looks like they did save us the one compound, so we're good. That generally is the case, but I've learned not to trust a whole lot about what goes on during the race experience at this point. Okay, so we're going to change to our final soft compound. Doesn't appear as though we're going to have any rain, which is good because, well, I'm bad about missing those things. All right, pit this lap for you, and we're going to wait till we get this same message for Latifi as well. And there you go. Same thing here. Soft tire and pit this lap. Now, as much as I would love to watch the race, in fact, I have done on a few occasions and testing, sit here and watched a good portion of the race simply because I love the graphics. I love the fact that I can watch from on board our own teams. I love all of those things, but it just simply takes so long that it is hard to do. So I'm going to go back to 16X so that we can run through the remainder of today. And I'm going to do one more thing here, maybe. Let's see how this works out. All right, so we're going to run a couple of laps here. There we go. Now that we've run a couple of laps, I'm going to go full attack mode, and we're just going to see what happens. Not sure what we have to gain here with Latifi. Yeah, we don't have anything to gain with Latifi, so never mind. Latifi, you just stay where you are. But we're going to go full attack mode. And we're going to see if we can indeed make up any times, perhaps catch Vettel. We're a long way behind, but hey, at this point, we're at the end of the race. Give it a shot. We really don't have a whole lot to lose. And again, the ERS is something that we could certainly try to use to our advantage, but I told myself I wasn't going to do that in today's video because it does get quite frustrating for me because that is not my preferred way of playing the game. All right, so we definitely have brought down the gap. I mean, you can see that. That's the first time we've seen a 5 in a very long time. We were up over 7 and even at 8 seconds at some points during the race, if not more. But we're bringing it down. Unfortunately, as you can see in the top left-hand corner of the screen, we are running out of laps. And now, well, look at that. We are definitely losing time. And a lot of that is because of we are now the lap traffic. We are getting lapped. And again, if you're watching here, if the 16X hopefully is not making you dizzy, I try not to watch it too terribly close. I spend most of my time looking at the bottom of the screen. If I'm going to be watching this, I move down to at least 8X. But overall, okay, our team
performance for Alex
seems happy, but you could hear, and I highly recommend listening to at least the beginning of the comments from the announcer after the race, because he will tell you a bit of a hint about how your performance was versus what you're expected to do. Right there, he said it was an okay performance. So we did not meet our goals for that race. Even if you couldn't remember anything about what your goals were, he will let you know whether you did or did not. So here are the results, and of course we did not earn any points. We were nowhere near the top 10. 18th and 20th. We're down here at the bottom, as I would have expected, fighting with Aston Martin for last place. And then constructors, of course, we're nowhere near where we need to be for that, but that's why it's called a long-term plan. Now we get into the experience. How much experience did we gain? And we get a little bit more information about our drivers. First and foremost, you see the experience gain is 0. We did not use our reserve driver, so he gained no experience. And you can see his growth potential, 1.49, so it might not be a terrible idea to get him some experience. Latifi, 490. Now, as the experience points accrue, you will receive points, performance points, that you can then use to improve the statistics of your driver. After one race, we don't have any of those, but that is the course of action. So obviously, the faster we can improve the number of points we're getting, we need to do it. And you can get a breakdown of exactly how we earn those points. You get points for things like overtakes and defending, fast laps, that type of thing. All of those can give you experience. However, if you fail to do things, then that is certainly not a great thing either. And you also see the growth potential. And we see that Albon is a little bit more in the potential department than is Latifi. So there's a lot of information to be gathered here on this screen. As always, take a look over to the right-hand side of the screen as you scroll around, and that will give you much more information in detail. So here, let's go ahead and hit on continue. And here is our financial report. Now, the $23,847 you see here, that was our guarantee that did not work out for qualifying. So we lost a little bit of money there, but again, not a huge amount. Our overall balance gain, $3.77 million. So that's the money added to our account and money that we can spend on any number of upgrades moving forward. So we're back up to $6.6 million. Now at this point, we've done our first upgrades. Granted, they are in progress at this point, but we've done some upgrades. We are in the process of making some new parts. We have projects underway, and as soon as these projects are done on the design side, we will add them to the manufacturer side so that they can then be put on the car and hopefully help us gain some positions. But right now, you can also see the validity in improving and upgrading your facilities, because right now we can only do 2 projects at one time. So it would definitely be worth our time to improve our facilities so that we can do 3, 4, or more projects at any given time. The more projects we can do and the faster we can do them, the faster we can improve. So as we end up today's video, let's take a look at this inbox, and here's what we were dreading. The board is letting us know that they're disappointed. We performed below expectation. We knew that was going to happen. We didn't have a particularly good race. So we're going to need to work very quickly to improve our performance. And then just below, here is our new suspension that nobody bothered to let us know about until, and oh, by the way, after the end of the race weekend. So then we have the scouts. Remember, in today's video, we didn't do anything with scouting. We didn't scout any new drivers, any new staff, or anything. We'll save that for a future video. But right now, our head scout is letting us know, hey, this is a driver you might want to take a look at. But again, we'll do that in a future video. But for today, thank you guys so much for joining me. You've gotten to see a lot here in the first 2 videos. Who knows what we might get into in the future.